Hello and welcome to another episode of That Football Topic. I'm your host, as always, Sam Furmaniak. And today we're going to get into my recap of Wild Card Weekend. It was kind of an up and down weekend, a few too many blowouts for my liking, but very interesting nonetheless. So without further ado, let's get right into it. We're going to start with probably game-wise between this and the Cowboys, one of the better games of the weekend. And that was the first one. That was the Raiders and the Bengals. And the Bengals, finally, they got their first playoff win in 31 years. And it was thanks to Joe Cool, Joe Slick, Joe Burrow. He looked like he had been there before. I mean, in his post-game press conference, he was like, yeah, that's great. It was cool that we won, but that's not where we want to be. We still have more games to go. So he is locked in on getting to Los Angeles, getting to SoFi for the Super Bowl. And this game overall, it kind of went exactly how I thought it would go. There was going to be a lot of sort of, I don't know, low scoring, a lot of field goals, kind of in this scoring range that it was, 26-19. But with the Bengals pretty much with the upper hand or lead the entire time, that's exactly what it came down to. Raiders had a chance on the final drive, were not able to punch it in to tie the game up. And a lot of controversy actually came out of this game because of the whistle thing being blown during the play and the touchdown, which when looking at it, yes, in the rules it says if there's a premature whistle during the play gets replayed and redone. That's not the biggest problem to me. The biggest problem is why is the whistle being blown in the first place? Like when you just look at the play by itself, that's a touchdown. Joe Burrow was inbounds. He throws it. Tyler Boyd catches it. He was open, by the way, touchdown. And people are saying, oh, well, the Raiders defenders heard the whistle. There was not a Raider within 2 feet of Tyler Boyd. He had already given up on the play before the whistle had blown. That was a touchdown. So while yes, technically in the rules it said that it should have been reset, I am not mad at all that it wasn't because in the end that still should have been a touchdown. And if this was overturned and like they said, oh, there was a premature whistle, people being like, oh, that's bullshit. You can't have premature whistles and like basically taking away a touchdown for the Bengals. So it really went both ways. I'm not that concerned about it. And now looking ahead for the Bengals, it is interesting. They got a really fun game. They get to go to Nashville and take on the number 1 seed in the AFC, the Tennessee Titans. And I love this matchup. The Bengals definitely have a chance, but the return of the king. Derrick Henry is coming back, and that definitely concerns me for the Bengals and their run defense because although Josh Jacobs only got 13 carries, they allowed 6.4 yards per attempt for Josh Jacobs in that game. So their run defense wasn't as great. However, the Raiders never had a lead in that, or I guess once Cincinnati got their first drive done, they never had a lead in that game. So they were doing a lot more passing than I think they wanted to. And now they have to go play Derrick Henry, and who knows? He might not be as healthy, not as healthy because he's had the bye to rest, but he might not be back up to full speed. I think he will be. I don't see anything holding Derrick Henry back, which does concern me a little bit. But we'll get into those games on the next Stop the Clock with Jude. And then for the Raiders, I'm really interested to see what happens with their head coaching search because, of course, Gruden got let go between week 5 and week 6. And I think Rich Bisaccia has actually made a very strong case to remain on as the head coach for the Las Vegas Raiders. I mean, since taking over, they went 8-5 and they won their last 4 games of the regular season to get themselves into the playoffs. But then another name that's really circulated around the Raiders specifically has been John Harbaugh, who is the coach at Michigan. He just had by far his best year at Michigan. He already has that NFL coaching experience as he went to the Super Bowl with the 49ers. So that could be a definite option for them. But I think there's definitely a case for Bisaccia. Now let's move on to the next game. That was the Patriots and the Bills. This one was a slaughter. It's as simple as that. I mean, on Stop the Clock, I was concerned and I vocalized and criticized my opinions about Josh Allen's inability to play well in the cold weather, which is really what they brought him there in Buffalo to do. And he proved me wrong. He had, I think, one of the best performances of his career in that playoff game. He was 21 for 25, had 308 yards, 5 touchdowns to go along with 66 yards on the ground. I mean, he threw more touchdowns and incompletions that game, which is absolutely insane. Their offense as a whole had a perfect game as they scored a touchdown on all 7 of their drives. This team right here, this Bills team, they're built to beat the Kansas City Chiefs, and they already have this season. They went into Arrowhead on Sunday night. Granted, yes, this was earlier in the season. The Chiefs were still kind of in their slump, as you call it. But I think that's got to mean something, and I think they're built to go and beat the Chiefs. We'll get to see it next week against the Patriots. Definitely, I think the most anticipated matchup next week is definitely that game. On the other side, the Patriots, it was rough. It was not a good night for them, but I think they'll be fine. I mean, no one expected them to really be even in the playoffs. I think they had a very successful season. In fact, they were, in my opinion, a year or two early to get to this point. So a lot of people are having problems with Mac Jones, and yes, he might not be the flashiest guy. Let's relax. He's a rookie. Tom Brady was never the flashiest guy either, but we all know how he's been. So Patriots, you guys had a good season. There's a lot to be proud of and look forward to for next year. All right, Eagles-Bucks, the first of the Sunday slates. I expected this kind of a score, like 31-15. I didn't expect the Bucks to have a margin of 31-0 at one point. I mean, it was a blowout, to say the least. I thought the Eagles would come out with a little more fight, but the Bucks defense looked good, and the Eagles came out flat. And this Bucks team is really only going to get better as they'll welcome the return of Leonard Fournette and Ronald Jones. I mean, Giovanni Bernard and Keyshawn Vaughn both held it down in the run game. Both had, I think, over 50 yards and a touchdown in that game. So they still ran the ball very well without their top two backs, and they'll get those backs back. I think going into this next game, you are at home again versus the Rams, who came off a really big win. The run defense, it's crucial. I'll talk about it when I talk about the Rams as well. I mean, with the exception of that long Boston Scott run, the Bucs defense against the run was as advertised. I mean, they're one of the number one rush defenses, and they played one of the number one rushing offenses and really shut it down. So, I mean, it's really going to come down to that in that Rams game. Now let's talk about this game. Kind of hurt Jude. I felt bad. We were together watching this. It was a tough pill to swallow. I mean, I was pissed because it ruined my perfect record. I was about to go 6-0 this week. But the 49ers were the only wildcard team to win this week. The only team to win on the road that wasn't a divisional winner. And the key to victory for them was their dynamic running game with Elijah Mitchell and Deebo Samuel. They both played really well. I mean, it's crazy. Kyle Shanahan has one of the best running schemes in all of football, and it definitely showed against the Cowboys, who have a good defense and good players that are good at stopping the run. The scheme was just too good, and the running backs and Deebo Samuel, whatever you want to call him, running back, receiver, he was doing it all. And I think their defense also played really well. They were able to generate pressure. They picked off Dak Prescott once and really held them out of the end zone for the majority of the game. I am a little concerned because they did lose Bosa. Nick Bosa went out and was out for the game with a concussion, and then Fred Warner had that ankle injury. Those are crucial players for next week against the Packers that we don't know if they're going to have. So that's going to be really interesting to me. But let's talk about the Cowboys, because this seems to be the same old story year in and year out with the Cowboys. I mean, I think they're in an interesting position because you got to look at the organization as a whole. Like, what is the problem here? Why do we have one of the most talented rosters in the National Football League and we can't seem to get it done? We were the only divisional winner to lose at home this week. And you were a 500-point offense this year. You were the only team in NFL history to have a 4,000-yard passer, 1,000-yard rusher, 1,000-yard receiver, 10-plus sacker, and someone with 10-plus picks. Like, a team this well-rounded should not lose in the wild card round. And you have to say, what the hell is the problem here? Let's watch this. Let's look through the entire roster and see if there's a problem. Quarterback, no, you got Dak. I trust Dak. Yes, he didn't have the best game, but you're paying him $140 million for a reason. Running back, yes, Zeke has been a little shaky, but he was still one of, I think, a top 6 rusher this year. And you have Tony Pollard, who's been nice as well. Not a problem. The offensive line, it could be a little better, but then again, you also have 2 all-pros on your offensive line. Receiver, we talked about this before. They have one of the best receiving corps in football with Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb. Tight end, Dalton Schultz, great young player, really underrated. He was on my all-underrated team. Defensive linemen, star-studded. You got guys like Randy Gregory and DeMarcus Lawrence. Maybe you could use a little more interior help. That's fine. Not the reason I lost that game. Linebackers, you have an all-pro at rookie in Micah Parsons and Leighton Vander Esch, who's taking some hate. He's not as bad as people say. Cornerback, you had the league leader in interceptions. Maybe you could use another piece there to pair with Trayvon Diggs. And then safety, you have Javon Curse, who had a really good year for the Cowboys. In special teams, their punter was the MVP of that game. Let's keep it real. And overall, they haven't had as many problems on that. And then you look at coaching. What's wrong with that? What about your offensive and defensive coordinators? Kellen Moore and Dan Quinn are both candidates to get head coaching jobs elsewhere. So you got to look at that and be like, okay, these are pretty good coordinators. Then you get to the head coach. That's where one out of the two problems lies for me is in the head coach. I do not trust Mike McCarthy at all. It's easy to go win a Super Bowl when you have Aaron Rodgers, Jordy Nelson, Randall Cobb at the helm. I don't put yes, he had some good years with the Packers, but oh my goodness. And this leads to, I guess, problem number 2, which is all kind of the same problem, and that's Jerry Jones. I'm sorry. He wants credit for the Cowboys' success, as simple as that. So he's going to try and sort of whittle himself in there to get that credit, as you will. And that's the problem here. I mean, with guys like Mike McCarthy and Jason Garrett, those are guys who you know what you're going to get out of them. And it's when the team loses or the team starts winning with those guys, they're not going to get all the credit. It's going to be the roster and guys like Dak and CD, all the guys that Jerry Jones went out and signed and drafted as the general manager for the Dallas Cowboys. So he's going to get credit for putting that team together. However, if you were to go out and hire a guy who maybe you don't know about, such as a Kevin Stefanski, Cliff Kingsbury, Brian Flores, Zach Taylor, and then if you get one of those guys and the Cowboys are really successful, then yes, the team's going to get success. And then the other, I guess, credit to give will go to that head coach, whoever that may be. And it's not going to – they're going to get more – that head coach is going to get more credit than Jerry Jones, and that's not going to sit well with Jerry Jones. And he doesn't like that. So that's why he hasn't done that. And this is the problem with the Cowboys. This is why they're in the same cycle of having one of the most talented rosters in the National Football League and consistently missing the playoffs, getting bounced in the first round, second round, whatever it is. This is why they've had all these playoff appearances and haven't made it to a conference championship since the 90s. It's this constant cycle, and it needs to start at the top with Jerry Jones either stepping down or them getting a much better head coach, because roster-wise, one of the best in the league. Coordinators, you got them. We need a management change in Dallas, and I think that's the only way for the Cowboys to break this cycle. Whew, okay. I guess those are my feelings on the Cowboys. I wonder if Jude will agree with me there. Let's go Steelers and the Chiefs. Speaking of Jude, him and I on Stop the Clock last week, we kind of laughed at this game, especially for it being Sunday night, because this is exactly how we thought it would go. I mean, for the Steelers to win this game, Big Ben would need to have a perfect game, plus the defensive touchdown that TJ Watt provided for them, and for the defense to hold the Chiefs under 30 points. They only got one, and that was a defensive touchdown by TJ Watt. Instead, Big Ben threw for 24 yards in the first half, and it was Patrick Mahomes who went out and had a brilliant performance, throwing for 404 yards and 5 touchdowns. And it's a real shame because I feel like the win versus the Ravens for the Steelers in the last game of the season, that was the perfect way for Big Ben to go out, and it would have been a lot more entertaining and exciting to see the Chargers in the postseason. However, we can't trust the Chargers to do anything clutch, even with a generational talent at quarterback and a stacked roster. It's just the Chargers. That's who they are. Not the point. This game was a wash for the Chiefs. They'll have a really tough opponent next week in Buffalo. All right, now let's talk about the Rams. Matthew Stafford and Odell Beckham finally got their first season W. I was so happy for them. And I said this on the last episode of Stop the Clock, that the Rams stars, they would have to shine bright, and that's exactly what they did. OBJ has been a huge pickup for the Rams. I mean, it worked out perfectly in the way that, not that it was a good thing Robert Woods got hurt, but OBJ was right there to fill in the void, and he's done just that. He had a really good game. Seeing him catch that fade was awesome. His first postseason touchdown. And it couldn't have come at a better time because it now takes a lot of pressure off of Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp. And yet, even with them there, Cooper Kupp is still eating. Of course, he was a Triple Crown winner. He still had a great game, scored. He had 5 catches, 64 yards, whatever it was. And then the guys the other big name that they brought in, Von Miller, he was eating. He had an outstanding game. Looked like he was back in his old 2015 postseason form, as Peyton Manning said on the Manningcast. He had a sack. He was making tackles in the backfield. It was really good to see. And now the Rams, with the return of Cam Akers, have an excellent 1-2 punch. I mean, Cam Akers totaled 95 yards in that game, his first real action. I think he had 17 carries in that game. And, of course, Sony Michel ran the ball really well. That's what you want. You want to Sony Michel run the ball, he gets tired, Cam Akers come in, and vice versa. It's what works so well for the Browns and the Broncos with their running back tandems. It keeps guys fresh, and that's kind of the meta that's sort of taken over the NFL now is the two-back system. That's why you only saw like 6 or so, 7, 8, 1,000-yard rushers. Usually there's a few more than that, but the NFL is kind of shifting to this two-back sort of offense, and it's working. I'm all here for it. And going into the next game against the Buccaneers, if they can run the ball and have that same kind of performance from their defense and special teams, which are outstanding, they got to look like their chances versus the Bucs. I mean, they already beat them earlier in the season. Granted, as I said, that was really early in the season. These are two completely different teams. But again, it's going to come down to the running game for the Rams in that one, I believe. Also, Matthew Stafford's ability to make big throws, because he really did not have to make big throws in this game just because the defense, special teams, and run game were so good. Now we have the Cardinals. Kyler did not look that good, and once again, the importance of having DeAndre Hopkins cannot be overstated. Granted, I don't put that entire loss on not having DeAndre Hopkins. I mean, the offense just could not get going at all. The running game, the passing game, the special teams was not good, and then the defense, well, they held for a little bit. At the same time, you got to give the offense has got to give the defense some help. They were not able to do it, but all around a good year for the Cardinals. They just have to work on finishing later in the season because they really did not do that this year. All right, well, I hope you guys enjoyed my wildcard recap. You will see me next, probably on Stop the Clock, episode 8 with Jude and Sam. Sometime this weekend as we get into the divisional round. We have 4 outstanding matchups. I think it's going to be a much better slate than the wildcard weekend in terms of good and close games. So I'm really looking forward to that. I hope you enjoyed the podcast and have a good day.